Well, a new expert report has found that Russia is guilty of inciting genocide in Ukraine. The research was conducted by 30 internationally recognized scholars from 2 think tanks. They have found that there are reasonable grounds to conclude that Moscow is in breach of the Genocide Convention. The report says Russia is guilty of inciting genocide and having the intent to commit genocide in Ukraine, legally obliging other countries to stop it. So for more, we now welcome the principal author of this report, international human rights lawyer Yona Diamond from the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights, joining us now from Montreal in Canada. Yona, thank you so much for your time on this day.
Thanks for having me.
So the world has seen the most graphic footage and brutal images out of Ukraine in more than 3 months now. How did you and your team of experts reach this conclusion, Russia inciting genocide in Ukraine?
Yeah, so we were watching as Russia tore down piece by piece every element that makes up the bedrock of the World War II legal order, first by engaging in an unprovoked aggression against a neighboring democratic country, and then committing war crimes, crimes against humanity. And now we have watched as Russia has breached another fundamental principle underpinning the legal order, which is the Genocide Convention. We worked with experts from around the world, every region, experts in genocide, Eastern European history, Ukrainian and Russian history, and international law. And we reviewed the evidence and found that Russia is in breach of both Article 3C, which is direct and public incitement to commit genocide. And we also found reasonable grounds to believe that there is an intent to destroy the Ukrainian national group in part. And we definitively concluded that there exists a serious risk of genocide in Ukraine, which gives rise to the obligation to prevent, a legal obligation on all states.
Well, let's unpack exactly that, because your report talks about a minimum legal obligation on states to take reasonable action. So help break this down, the implications here. What is deemed to be reasonable action, and how are other countries obliged to get involved right now, given, of course, that the invasion is still ongoing?
That's a good question. And the legal obligation, of course, arises before any court of law hears the genocide case, or any body, international body. And in fact, we as experts who were part of the, founders of international criminal law were involved, and founding prosecutors have made this determination based on all the available evidence, which is known to states. So this, we know, is a legal obligation that now arises as soon as states become aware of a serious risk of genocide. Now, all that the International Court of Justice has said in terms of what that duty entails is that states must employ all means reasonably available so as to contribute to the prevention of genocide as far as possible. So that's all we know. So we know that states need to use all reasonably available means to prevent genocide, and that includes protecting the targeted victim group, Ukrainians, so by ensuring that the necessary humanitarian aid, assistance, and corridors are provided to the victims at risk, as well as supporting efforts around the world at prosecuting the perpetrators, as well as the duty to prevent has a stronger implication for countries with greater influence over the perpetrators, so Russia in this case. And so countries that have influence over improving the mediation efforts, facilitating those efforts, those are also all parts of what's required of the obligation to prevent, because it's about protecting those at risk of genocide above and beyond any other dimension to this war, which essentially is to end the violence.
And of course, as you well know, Joe Biden has already labeled Russian atrocities in Ukraine as genocide. That was already back in April. The International Criminal Court is investigating war crimes and has the authority to bring these charges of genocide. But what are the realistic, likely timeframes here, given once again that these findings of yours are coming so early in the conflict and that this invasion is still ongoing?
Yeah, that's a good question. The cases before the International Criminal Court, of course, can take over a decade or, years. And, take the Omar al-Bashir case as an example, who was still technically at large, although the first arrest warrant was issued in 2009. So we've seen that the international community, investigators and prosecutors are very quick to respond. And we've also taken the responsibility to respond in real time, because the risk of genocide grows as the war drags on, as soldiers become weary, as Russian forces occupy more and more areas of Ukraine with the opportunity to commit the same atrocities and mass killings that we've seen under their occupation in other areas. So the risk has only grown, and that's why we've identified it in real time. And we hope that this will be used in investigations and prosecutions, which are being undertaken by national authorities and on the international stage.